Welcome to the first video in Unit 4, Part 2. We're going to call this Part 2 because Part 1 was the Roman Republic, which collapsed at this point, and now we're heading into the Roman Empire, which is what we'll consider Part 2 of Unit 4. So we're in the same unit, but it's a new notes packet, new table of contents, new vocabulary, new activities. Okay, so we're going to start today with the age of Augustus during the Pax Romana. So this is the first section of notes in your new notes packet. Octavian, the adopted son of Julius Caesar, accepted the title Augustus, meaning exalted one. During his rule, Rome reached its peak in power and reached a time of great peace. So he renames himself Augustus Caesar. He becomes Rome's first emperor of the empire. He's the one that really starts the Roman Empire. And he is going to start this era of peace, which will last for about 207 years, called the Pax Romana. So this shows you how vast the Empire of Rome became. Originally, when Rome was just a republic, it just started on the Italian peninsula, covered here, maybe a little bit down here, and a little out to here. But with the empire, everything in pink and orange is considered part of the Roman Empire. So it is quite large. It's the largest empire to date at this point in history. From 27 BC or BCE to around 180 AD or CE, there was that period of 207 years of peace called the Pax Romana. Now, while it was called the Pax Romana, while it was called Roman peace, doesn't mean everyone had a perfect scenario, but it was much more stable than what had come before. At its peak, 70 million people lived in the Roman Empire. That's 1/4 of the world's population at the time lived in the Roman Empire. That's a massive amount of people. The city of Rome had a population of 1 million, half of whom were slaves. So the city alone had 1 million people living in it, and the surrounding regions had quite a few as well. Again, 1/4 of the world's population. That's a massive amount. To feed the huge empire, agriculture was the #1 priority. You have to feed those millions of people. So food was grown on huge farms called latifundia. We briefly talked about this at the end of our last unit. So such a huge population, rapidly growing. You see the years here, tells you what year we're looking at. This tells you the population, growth of Roman population in the late Republic, moving into the empire. So this is times 1,000. So by 1 BC, Rome's population was a population of 1 million. So 1,000 times 1,000, 1 million, that's how we get to the population. Economy during the Pax Romana, the whole empire used uniform silver coins called a denarius, which made trade easier. If everyone used the same coin, it was worth the same amount to everybody. It made trade much simpler. Helped create prosperity and stability. This is what it looked like. Rome had a huge network of roads that connected Rome all the way to Persia and Egypt. Roads were paved and had drainage. This was important because it shows how together Rome was at this point. They were paving roads. They were making these roads because this trade was so important that happened on these roads, the travel that happened. They even had drainage in them, which meant they wouldn't get ruined from all of the rain and different types of weather. So all roads are going to go all over the place in Southern Europe, in Northern Africa, in Southwest Asia, where the Roman Empire reaches, and beyond, to facilitate trade for the most part. So everything on here that is a red line represents roads or travel routes that lead to Rome. So you see the phrase, all roads lead to Rome. if you've ever heard that before, this is where it comes from. It's the road network that literally all roads would lead eventually to Rome. Rome was a huge trading post. The city of Rome and the Roman Empire as a whole. I mean, trade within the empire, trade outside of the empire. There were so many people, so many resources, that it was definitely a huge, huge trade location. A lot of goods came to Rome from elsewhere, and a lot of goods went from Rome to elsewhere. So if you read through here, excuse me, it says the benefits of peace facilitated travel throughout the empire. Along with food and trade goods, language, science, philosophy, religious ideas, and artistic traditions were exchanged among the diverse people and cultures of the ancient world. So you can see some of the things that Rome sends to the provinces, the regions outside the outer edges of the empire, okay, from the central area of Rome. From the provinces to Rome, so from the outer edges of the empire into Rome, these are the goods that would come. And then from beyond the empire to Rome, so from all the way out further east, further north, they're going to trade with Rome as well, and these are the things that they are going to bring into Rome. So all kinds of goods and ideas, and that's an important point. It's not just goods, it's also ideas, religions, cultures, all of that is going to mix. Safe passage was guaranteed on Roman roads. The roads were so well built, they remained in use in some places for more than 1,000 years. That's pretty significant, that they were able to be sustained for so long with pretty minimal effort, because they had been established so well to begin with. The culture of the Pax Romana, Augustus encouraged the arts. All kinds of authors would write with his support. He encouraged this during the Pax Romana. Public buildings, bridges, and aqueducts were also designed and built. Aqueducts carried water into the cities. They were incredibly important because the fresh water that was brought into the cities was for such a large population. These aqueducts would be constantly bringing in this water, used for bathing, used for drinking, used for fountains. Fountains were pretty common in Rome. Bridges and buildings were also created during the Pax Romana. Augustus was a great emperor who stabilized the frontier, glorified Rome with splendid public buildings, set up a civil service. Government was very stable. So this is the government of Pax Romana. So we're going to go a little bit more into depth about how the civil service worked in Rome under Augustus. So a civil service paid workers from the plebeian class, so that's that lower class, to manage grain supply, collect taxes, manage a postal system. So the plebeians were, in the Roman Republic, the ones who were really struggling. They weren't employed often. And so in the empire, what Augustus is going to do is he's going to use the unemployed, the plebeians, to help manage the empire, to do the jobs that need to be done to help the empire. So even if they're not able to farm, they can collect taxes, they can be part of the postal system, they can manage grain supply. Quick reminder here as well, the first postal system was created during the Persian Empire. During, it was across the royal road that stretched from Sardis to Susa. So again, the Persian Empire is where the postal system first began. Just a little memory jolt for you there. Roman law was firmly established and set up a structure that is still used in most modern governments. The idea of 3 branches in government, for example. So Roman law was committed to making sure it was successful, to making sure people had a voice, to making sure that it could be sustained. So emperor succession is something that's pretty important. Peace and prosperity depended on orderly transfer of power. So when an emperor dies, who's going to take over after him? Is it a dynasty, so his son? Is it a matter of voting? How does it happen? Well, this is the one thing Augustus really didn't account for. didn't plan well enough. There was no written law for how to transfer the emperor's power when he died. So when Augustus, or Octavian, died in 14 AD, or CE, he ended up passing power to his stepson. That's who took power after Augustus died. But things could get very complicated. So from the point Augustus died, for quite some time, there's a lot of chaos over who should really rule, who has the right to rule, because it wasn't written by Augustus, by anyone. When Augustus died, it caused a lot of chaos. In some years, 68 to 69 AD or CE, for example, there were 4 emperors who ruled in a single year. Because as an emperor was appointed by the Senate, they would be killed. Another would be appointed, that one would be killed. And this happened 3 times before an emperor was finally selected that stayed in power for some time. So there was a lot of chaos with the constant overturn of who was leading. When the period of Pax Romana ended around 180 AD or CE, few emperors died of natural causes or ruled longer than a few years. So if you became emperor, it wasn't for life in terms of a long period of time. It was for life and in terms of until you were killed. Because most of the emperors are going to be assassinated. Very few die of natural causes. That is the end of the video on the Pax Romana. Please make sure you have written all of the notes that were underlined in this section.